Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I am Precious Chikudi. We begin with the front pages of the papers this morning. Starting off with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with NLC shuns meeting with federal government starts 2 day warning strike. The writer says accuses Lalong of industrial dictatorship, blackmail, strike will worsen plight of Nigerians, and that's come from federal government. Says we waited on NLC for negotiation, all to no avail. Adds no formal communication from Labour on strike. A Baptist convention warns NLC against hijack by hoodlums. Ask federal government to hasten palliatives. Rethink your stance on warning strike. 100 CSOs tells Labour. Also, we can see a photo story showing the Lagos Blue Rail line kicks off. Obasanjo Sanusi blast Buhari over reckless spending. You can see that on page 27. On page 25, why Tinubu appointed Baja COS, that's coming from source. Stories above, we have a presidential poll. Tinubu Atiku will be no fate tomorrow. Strike, presidential poll verdict. DSS raises alarm over violence protests. And also on pages 11 to 13, Bola Tinubu, a president in need of help. Let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation is leading with federal government TUC strike over subsidy payments not needed now. Right, it says NLC pushes ahead, shuns meeting with minister, wage award plan ready in 2 weeks. Presidency caution against mixing labor matters with politics. Stories above. Tolling of federal highways to go on, says Umahi. Wando acquires now upstream oil assets. Sonwulu drops 5 in new nominee list to assembly. More insight into Tinubu's 100 days in office. Tribunal verdict on poll. Tinubu will be confident. Court okay the live telecast of judgment tomorrow. And lastly, in front page of the Nation newspaper, Sonwolu Hamzat Ikuforiji Obanikoro on train ride. All right, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian is leading with bold reform leaves the Nigerians more miserable amidst assurances. Gabon coup leader General Gun Ema sworn in as interim president. Apprehension as Labour begins warning strike, court rules on presidential election. Sanwo-Olu flags off commercial operations of Lagos Blue Line Rail. Tinubu not to blame. Buhari plunged the economy into crisis, says Sanusi. Policemen nabbed colleagues for abduction, extortion in rivers. And we can also see an infograph showing Tinubu's burden of resetting Nigeria in 100 days. And he has a fuel subsidy removal, foreign exchange FX liberalization, appointment of service chief, Emefiele's arrest and persecution, EFCC boss removal, student loan scheme, dissolution of MDA's boards, appointment of ministers, Niger crisis, rising inflation, high fuel prices, bloated cabinet, spike in living costs, shrinking household income, worsening FX crisis, rising poverty. All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch is leading with a presidential poll petition. Military police warn protesters as tribunal delivers verdict Wednesday. Right, it says the military police vow to prevent violence. Tribunal proceedings for live telecast. Court orders workers to stay away. PDP LP confidence. APC promises to obey ruling. 40 years after Buhari's suspension, Lagos Light Rail begins operation. Foreign investors repatriated $5 billion dividend, and that's coming from CBN. Four suspects arrested for torturing trainee internet fraudsters. You can see that on pages 4 and 5. Over 1,000 lawmakers appointees get diplomatic passports. You can see that on page 14. Stories above. Subsidy pains. Labor vows to ground economy begins strike. Maritime bank workers CSO plan rally. Federal government begs the NLC to shelve strike. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, Rep summons 6 MDAs over federal government asset sales. And that's all we can take on the front pages of the this morning. And of course, join us after the break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We're just joining still today in the news on Vanguard Live. Let's move to some of our top stories for today. And of course, NLC shuns meeting with federal government and begins a 2 day warning strike. And the Nigerian Labour Congress begins a 2 day warning strike after shunning a meeting with the federal government over increasing hardship and suffering across the country caused by the removal of fuel subsidy. This came as the Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon Lalong, yesterday warned that the strike will worsen the plight of ordinary Nigerians and urged NLC to shelve the action. The NLC had on Friday given notice of a 2-day warning strike to protest the excruciating mass suffering and impoverishment experienced around the country, threatening a total and indefinite shutdown of the economy within 14 working days or 21 days after the warning strike if government did not take steps to address the hardship experienced across the country. Now, while briefing on Friday after its NEC meeting, NLC President Joe Ajaero said NEC in session of NLC resolved to embark on a total and indefinite shutdown of the nation within 14 working days or 21 days from today until steps are taken by the government to address the excruciating mass suffering and impoverishment experienced around the country. Now, those sources in the NLC leadership told Vanguard that the strike will go ahead, of which we've seen that in some part of the country, like in Kano, government offices and other facilities are shut down, and also the Nigerian seaport is also shut down. Uh, despite the yesterday scheduled meeting with the Minister of Labour and Employment, it was gathered that a media briefing by the minister allegedly castigating labour leaders ahead of the meeting forced NLC leaders to shun the meeting that would have held at the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment Federal Secretariat. Now, the minister was said to have threatened the NLC leaders at his briefing for closing any chance that NLC would honour the meeting. And one of the visibly angry NLC leaders told Vanguard that the minister alleged outburst a few hours before the scheduled meeting put the final nail to the NLC's resolve to proceed with the strike as resolved by members of its National Executive Council NEC last Friday. His words were, "We were scheduled to meet the Minister of Labour and Employment later today," that was yesterday, precisely by 3 p.m. But a few hours to the meeting, the minister called a media briefing where he castigated us and threatened us amongst other uncomplimentary words. Not that the meeting would have stopped the strike, but we intended to attend the meeting in the spirit of social dialogue. All right, and we've also heard that the strike is ongoing in some places. Some people are already observing the strike, like the seaport. There's a shutdown there, as well as some offices in Kano. We'll keep on bringing you up to speed with some of the places who are also some places where they are also observing the strike. Let's move on to our next story, and our next story is presidential poll. Tinubu, Atiku, Obi will know their fate tomorrow. This is after weeks of delay. The Presidential Election Petition Tribunal (PPT) sitting in Abuja will tomorrow deliver its judgment on Atiku Abubakar and Mr. Peter Obi's petition seeking to nullify President Bola Tinubu's election. And the Justice Haruna Samani-led five-member panel of the court had on August 1st okayed the cases for judgment after all the parties adopted their final briefs of argument. Meanwhile, the PEPC had granted permission for live telecast of its judgment of the three petitions seeking to remove President Tinubu from office. The court, in a statement by its chief registrar, Mr. Omar Bangari, said the decision was to ensure transparency and openness in its proceedings. It, however, warned that only accredited individuals will be granted access into the courtroom tomorrow for the judgment. In a bid to promote transparency and openness, this judgment will be televised live by interested television stations for the public to follow. Access to the court premises will be strictly on accreditation. Only accredited individuals, including counsel and representative of political parties, will be granted access into the courtroom. Interested members of the public are advised to watch proceedings from their television set, the statement read. And of course, everybody can't wait to see what's going to happen tomorrow and hear what the judiciary has to tell us concerning the elections. All right, let's take a look at our next story, and that's Obasanjo Sanusi blast Buhari over reckless spending. Now, former President Olusegun Obasanjo and fourth Emir of Kano Sanusi Lamido Sanusi took a swipe at the administration of former President Muhammad Buhari over the bad shape of the economy. While Obasanjo declared that the former president's government was allegedly a reckless spender, Sanusi lamented that Nigeria led a forced life under the administration of former President Muhammad Buhari. In an interview, the former president also spoke on the increasing coup in Africa. On the current bad shape of the economy, Obasanjo said, Tinubu said the other day that it was unacceptable that he would spend 90% of his revenue to service debts. I wasn't spending 90% when I went worldwide to get debt relief. Do you think that anybody will give you debt relief today? Buhari was spending money recklessly. I know Buhari didn't understand economics. I put that in my book. But that he could also be so reckless, I didn't know. Who would you go to today and ask for a favor? Tinubu says he has trimmed the number of people attending the United Nations General Assembly. Is that news? He will meet with Justin Trudeau and he will meet with Emmanuel Macron. That will not solve any problem. When asked to comment on the increasing era of military coup in Africa, Obasanjo described it as a new phenomenon in Africa. He also insisted that the liberal democracy copied from Western countries will not work in Africa. Let's take a look at Mr. and Mrs. before we go. And Mrs. is speaking this morning. She says, God, my husband is a serial womanizer and I want you to stop him. But the situation is getting worse by the day. God, why? And Mr. replies, says, he will attend to you, but there's a long queue of people with pressing and more important matters. Mr. and Mrs. always coming for each other, like always. And of course, this is where we'll have to draw the curtains. Also, remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen to find out today's stories.